Welcome to episode 7 of the now international podcast More Fun Talking Retro, a show created to twitch curtains and stick its nose into the retro gaming and vintage tech community's business, whether it likes it or not. After all, if the retro gaming and vintage tech community is coming and going at all hours, knocking over the bins and scaring the cat, well, it's just us being community-minded by keeping tabs on what's going on. And community is always closest to my heart. Today, I'm joined by someone who understands this nebulous concept, having been part of and created a few communities himself over the years since tech first became something a wider audience could consume. He's also someone passionate about the preservation of vintage computer history, going to great lengths to document and record these important milestone markers that most of us have forgotten even happened. A noble cause, I think we can all agree. And as an actual UK-dwelling Brit, I can honestly say I've learned a great deal about the different ways our cultures have evolved around computers from his YouTube channel, the Oldskool PC. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome Jim Leonard, a.k.a. the Oldskool PC, a.k.a. Trickster, and a.k.a. MobyGamer. Jim, if that's your real name, are you on the run?
I have too many aliases, and I cannot tell you why.
It's a secret, and you're not going to have to kill me.
That's right. I'd have to kill you. Well, thanks. It's really great to be here, and I love that there's a podcast dedicated to this aspect of what we do. It's funny, the community documents the history, but no one documents the community. So I think this is great.
Oh, excellent! No, that was exactly.
Thank you. Good night. I'll take off.
Yeah, that was exactly the reason that I wanted to do this, because I just kept coming back to the fact that this is the part of the whole thing, the whole hobby that I love the most is the interaction with other people, and it's the reason that we make YouTube videos, really, isn't it? Because we want to interact with other people, we want to share what we do, we share our passion with other people, and it's really nice when we often get YouTube comments that are positive coming back the other way. Not always, but often.
It's a welcome change, because in the world of archiving and being a historian, generally it's the thing you're covering that gets the attention. But there's an awful lot of work that goes into making that happen. I've been a part of a couple of archival collectives for going on 30 years now. Our names are not known because it's not about us. It's about the thing that we're archiving. It's about the that kind of thing. So it's
important
nice
work.
It's nice to talk once in a while about the process.
Yeah. And although this is, this is a chat with you about the things that you do, it's, it ends up being more about the things that we do with other people, that, it's that interaction. It's that point where we meet somebody else and something interesting happens, something that we care about. Something that makes us smile. It always makes me smile when I come across anybody in the community in any kind of setting or situation. That's when I come alive. It's I thrive in that situation. I really want more of that in my life, and it's frustrating because where I live, there's nobody within 15 miles of me at this very moment in time that I know that shares my interest and hobby. It's where you live. Do you have people around you?
Thankfully, I do, because I live close to a major city. I live close to Chicago, Illinois, the Windy City. You may know it, and there is a community here. There has been for a while, probably since the late 70s. Actually, the BBS was invented here. For example, Ward Christensen, who unfortunately passed away last year. Late last year. And so there's always been kind of a local community. I'm part of the Chicago Classic Computer Club, which has been going on for who knows how many years. And more importantly, one thing that we've been running for the past, this will be our 20th year, is the Vintage Computer Festival Midwest, which is currently the largest vintage computer festival of its kind in the world. That's not necessarily a bragging point, because that kind of scale, which was sort of thrust upon us, we didn't necessarily ask for it, has its own set of challenges. And so meeting, if you had asked me if I was going to be a showrunner or a community manager or something like that 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I would have run the other way. But yeah, thankfully there is, and we have regular meetups. But I do feel for you, because there are certainly people all across the world for whom the internet is the only way to connect to people. But I'm glad this community exists. It's nice to have a common vocabulary that breaks down the barriers to communication. You meet another retro person, and you can, immediately make a joke about, I don't know, DRAM refresh times, or VSync, or
Was ZX81 keyboards?
Oh gosh, yes. Which thankfully we didn't have too much here. We had them in the Atari 400, but yeah, we thankfully I haven't had to suffer through that.
So let's go back to VCF, because I really want to talk about that. This is, as you said, it's been going for 20 years now.
Yeah,
I did look into this. It's a huge convention hall, isn't it?
It is now. So it started as an offshoot. So in the late 90s, someone named Selim Ismail created the Vintage Computer Festival. That's it, festival. And it happened to be located in California. And the concept spread. We really liked what they were doing out there. Some of us even made trips out there. And it's exactly what you think it is. It's essentially a giant room with a lot of people all at tables with their own. I mean, I'm sure you have these. I know you have these kinds of conventions in the UK now, especially with, for example, Neil's Cave museum, progression. But yeah, it started out like that. And then we didn't want to or couldn't afford to travel to California all the time. So we started one here. The one started here was started by someone who was then a student at Indiana University. And he ran it for 5 years, and then it moved to Chicago, where we and my other cohorts have been running it. I actually joined a little later. I joined maybe in the 10th year because I saw that they were struggling with recording their presentations, and I just sort of offered to volunteer, and I've been volunteering ever since. There are about 6 or 7 core people who run the show. And it's all volunteer. And last year, for the first time, it was a 501c3 nonprofit because people were saying, I'd love to donate to you to help run the show, but you're not a nonprofit, so I can't. So we went through all that paperwork. And it is huge. It is in a gigantic convention center now. We're a victim of, I guess, our own success. Is that how the phrase goes? Our philosophy for the show has always been free admission, so we don't charge for admission at all. And only last year did we start charging for tables, because we didn't have enough money ourselves to keep the show going. The show was essentially privately funded for a while, and then for the last 10 years, it's been self-perpetuatingly funded, at least when it was smaller, by auction. We had, our main ringleader, Jason Timmons, goes up and does a pretty good imitation of an auctioneer. And so we auction off donations to the show to try to raise money for next year's show, and so on. And just private donations and t-shirt sales and things like that. But about 3 years ago, 2 years after, I guess, COVID, we found ourselves perilously cramped in the space we had been in for 5 years, to the point where, honestly, it was kind of a fire hazard at that point. So the only other place we could go was a large convention center. And we found, researching, that these large convention centers, you don't necessarily have to be on the hook for 100,000 square feet. They can divide them up. And so we last year, it was 33,000 square feet, and then we didn't want to turn anybody away. And so close to the last minute, we expanded it to 50,000 square feet in order to get everybody in. That was almost 400 tables across, I want to say 200. I want to say almost 250 different exhibitors, because some exhibitors have more than one table. And this year, we're expanding it again to 66,000 square feet. And I don't know what else to say other than the fact that it's a bit of we're nervous wrecks all the way up to the show, and then the show kind of happens. We've been very fortunate at this scale. Just the 6 of us can't do it anymore, but thankfully there have been people local in the community, and even some people who travel in from out of town to visit the show. They've also helped volunteer run the show. Some of them will run the t-shirt table while someone needs to go get lunch or whatever. The weird thing about these gigantic convention halls is that you now lose access to services. So you may see me pushing a push broom across the whole surface of the floor at the end of the show, trying to clean up trash and so on. So it's the less glamorous side of vintage computing. But boy, when it's in motion, it's so great. One of the things I love the most about running the show is the few times I can get away from the presentation room and walk the floor. I see families. From dad down to 9, 8-year-old kids, even and some teenagers and young adults are starting their own exhibits. Like they're getting involved in the hobby and the history. So seeing the multi-generation participation, it makes it all worth it. Everything, the headache, the backache, the gout attacks, my broken back, the whole thing, it makes it 100% worth it, because the whole point of this is perpetuating the history. It's not just enjoying the history, but maybe trying to communicate some lessons from history. Is there anything we can learn? Is there anything interesting? Can we learn something about society back then? Is there something that we can look to the past to try to help solve some problems of today? We certainly have a lot of problems today with
passing
technology.
the baton on to the next generation is a noble cause all by itself.
So that's what makes it worth it. We're happy to do it.
Fantastic. I'm not going to hide the fact that I'm incredibly envious, not only that that you are within living distance of the biggest retro show in the world, but also that you get to take part in running it and getting involved with all of the other people that getting to talk to all those amazing people must be such a thrill. September it takes place.
It's usually the second weekend of September, and it is again this year. So the second weekend of September, for anyone who's in the area or is thinking of coming, Friday is exhibitor setup day. So unless you're an exhibitor or volunteer, you're not actually allowed entry, because we don't want the exhibitors getting bothered while they're setting up. But then all of Saturday and then Sunday until 3 or 4 p.m. is the close.
Okay. So the first time I saw you on the internet actually was a presentation where you were hosting a panel of YouTubers. I can't remember who was on it. It's probably Clint and Co. But that was that was the first time I saw you. So it was quite interesting, and then that led me to find your channel. Probably started off our relationship from that moment. That was quite interesting. It must be a hell of a thing to do that sort of presentation in front of a big crowd like that, and you're probably organising the technical side of it as well.
Yes,
I'd imagine.
Yes, you can't quite see it behind
me. That's a weight to carry.
A lot of some of the equipment actually that records it is behind me, but you can't quite see it. I failed public speaking 3 times in college. So to go up on a stage and try to act natural and parry both the panelists and the audience is definitely a learned skill that I've had to essentially wait until this stage in my life to even attempt, because the only thing that makes that better is practice, which is partially what the YouTube channel helped with, and knowledge. And the panelists that are up there, I'm become intimately familiar with either them or their work, and also the topic of what we're talking about. Which is not only vintage computing, retro computing, but in a few cases, because they're all YouTubers, the process of making videos about that kind of content as well. If I weren't so familiar with it, there's no way I could do it, and I'm always terrified. But if it looked natural, then thank you.
Do you ever over prepare for these things, you feel, or can you not get to that stage?
I wish I could prepare enough. Throughout the entire year, if something pops into my head, that would make a great panel question, I'll immediately pull out Google Keep on my phone and I'll put it into a list of questions that I've been collecting. This year, that list is very thin, so I need to put on my thinking cap and try to come up with something.
I love doing that sort of thinking, either in the shower where the phone doesn't work very well, or on walking. If I'm walking around, that's where my mind is let loose. But if I'm in here, it's occupied. There are things to distract me and to pull my attention away, and I can't process that sort of thing. But yeah, Google Keep's a good idea. I usually use Docs and just have a whatever the subject is, a page open.
It's whatever you've got in your pocket, and for me, it's just
Exactly.
it's like a quick icon right on the home screen, bang bang, and then I do it before I forget it. Walking is actually where half of those ideas come from, so that's a good thing. The trick, if I could pass on one lesson learned, I think the trick two tricks for anyone who's doing this. Two things I learned on that really helped. One is always try to ask questions they've never been asked, which can be difficult because you also have to keep them on topic. They get hundreds of, what's your favorite item in your collection? What's the thing you wish you had you didn't already have? I'm
just going to scratch some of these questions off my list.
Oh no, it's fun. No. I love getting asked that. You have to understand these YouTubers that I have on there ranged from 5K subs to 20K subs to, I mean, at one point, I had Adrian Black, Clint Basinger, and David Murray all on the same panel. You can understand they get asked the same questions all the time. So part of my challenge as the panel moderators to try to come up with leading questions to start the conversation that they've never been asked. That may actually require
dark art.
Some thought. Well, I think that's something that comes with practice. So that's where the practice angle comes in. And the second thing is what we do is we try to have the first 20 or 30 minutes be panel, and then the remaining hour after that, for 90 minutes total, questions for the audience, because this is a fan favorite thing to do. The room is completely packed. There are people lining the walls. And so we have a microphone in the middle, and they come up to it, kind of like, any Comic-Con panel or something like that, and then they ask their question. One of the things I've learned is that sometimes you have to be polite and kind in, I don't want to say cutting off the person who's asking the question, but like moving it along, because it's just a fact. This is not bad or good. Our hobby, like many hobbies, but especially so much more in technical hobbies, has a lot of neurodivergent people. And sometimes they aren't great at recognizing a cue for when it's time to stop talking about a subject and give the person behind you a chance. And so as panel moderator, that's my job, is to try to, come up with a graceful way of wrapping it up.
I just interrupt.
Well, fair. But I mean, there was one person who I think was still talking after 60 seconds. And that's when I finally interrupted. But generally,
it's not your turn anymore.
You wait for a break, and then you say, and then usually the favorite thing, which you'll hear me say a lot, is "Thanks very much for your question." Like, I'll get it in there, and they'll be like, "Oh, okay, I guess I'm done," and then they'll go. So those are the two main lessons I've learned stumbling through this process.
Okay, so can we move on to what your favorite PC? No, we're not going to do that.
You can.
I can see it. It's next to you.
You can. Well. It's hard to pick a favorite. It's funny, and here I am looking at it. Not really, but that is my daily driver. And a lot of the archival work and in previous years, demo scene work and stuff has been done on a machine I need set up all the time. And so there it is. And actually next to it is an expansion box with a monochrome monitor. So I can actually do color and mono at the same time. So I can go step through source code or look at registers on the mono monitor while the graphics are going on the color monitor and things like that. It's hard to pick a favorite. That's my favorite class. That's the one that I am known as a subject matter expert on.
I'm just going to interrupt because the audio listeners are going to be wondering what you're talking about.
I'm talking about
51.
I have an IBM 5160. It's an XT, an IBM PC XT. On top of it is a color monitor. Next to it is a 51. I confuse the numbers of the expansion unit and the monochrome monitor. The 5151 is the monochrome monitor. The expansion unit is the 5161. Oh, well, I forget. But anyway, there's an IBM PC XT with a CJ monitor on it, all IBM branded. next to it is an expansion unit. It's currently covered with a leather cover, but it looks exactly the same thing, but it's actually a specific expansion unit that gives more slots to the first one. And there's a big, thick cable behind there that you can't see that connects the two. And on top of the expansion unit is a monochrome monitor. So it looks like a second PC next to it, but it isn't. It's an expansion unit and a monochrome monitor. Inside the expansion unit, I've got EMS memory, an additional memory block to go above 640K, the monochrome card. I think I've got one or two other things in there. And then in the main PC, it's chock. It's all slots are completely full of network card, sound card, floppy controller, a trans copy card, which is an old card for copying copy protected software that I still use on occasion. And who knows what all else. So
we're going to peg that one as your favorite. Let's move on to another part, because you're a man with many facets, very much a diamond of the scene, and the demo scene is something that I didn't really take part in, because in the UK we didn't, especially in rural UK, PCs were slow to appear. Around here, we had a demo scene with the Amiga, very much so, but the PC demo scene wasn't really something I was personally aware of. I'm sure there was a UK one, but this was a big aspect of your life. I'm sure it still is an aspect of your life, but tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, you never really leave the demo scene. You just make a Shade Bob joke here and there, and you always stay in it. The demo scene started in Europe. The PC scene started much later, but you guys had Commodore 64 and Amiga and Atari ST demos in full swing long before I think a PC scene really got off the ground. And you see that every time you run an old pirated game on a C64, because of course that's where the demo scene started. It was the cracktros and the scrolling message, cracked by crack rat, shout out to Lord Blix and all this other stuff. So yes, the demo scene has been a large part of my life for 35 years, crazily enough. And it's because it intersected everything that I enjoyed about computing up until that time. I'd always been fascinated, in the 80s with using computers for things that they were not necessarily designed to do or intended to do. A lot of that was using... It started with using computers as a creative tool for composing music or drawing graphics or making 3D things appear on the screen. And the more I got familiar with the technology and the more that evolved, it kind of morphed into the computer itself is the art, like the art of using the computer, the art of programming the computer became the art form, or a blended form of the art form. So of course you can see where the demo scene fits perfectly into that.
This is a phrase I've heard you use before. Computers as a performance art.
Yeah.
Is this what you're talking about?
That's you have a great memory, and that is exactly what I'm talking about.
I made a note.
It is. It can be hard to verbalize. So forgive me if I stammer a bit, but it is the act of making the computer do the thing itself is an art form, and it is a performance art, and performance art itself is very subjective and hard to describe. But I was influenced by that as well in the 80s. I was a fan of early performance works by Ann Magnuson, Laurie Anderson, people who they create art not having been informed what art is. And so the result is very interesting, off the beaten path, unpredictable, not always great, but that itself is kind of what makes it fun. And because some of them are home runs, like Laurie Anderson's Superman, which I think charted in the UK. We didn't even hear it over here in America. Mm-hmm. So it's that kind of thing. And of course, the demo scene is once I was made aware of the demo scene for reals, which was in December of 1990. I downloaded something off of a BBS. I think the day after it was made, so it traveled across the pond like in one day, which is pretty astonishing for BBSs in the 1990s. and it was the Space Pigs mega demo. And it was like I'd seen things like this before, but they weren't self-evident as a specific type of thing, a demo with its own scene. And the Space Pigs mega demo very deliberately has shout outs to other people making other demos, not crack trails, but demos, like they defined it. Mm-hmm. And I just watched it over and over and over again. And because it was also outputting 4-channel digitized audio, it was essentially outputting Amiga audio through, at the time, a PC speaker. And I was like, what is this wizardry? And I was hooked. And ever since then, I think I wrote a few middling things in 93 and 94. In 95, I went to my first demo party, which was actually in Quebec. It was drivable, so it was 12 hours driving from where I lived to Quebec. In 95, I participated, I judged, I helped volunteer with the demo party. In 96, I entered and got 3rd place. And then after that, I just kept participating and entering, and here we are now. So it'll always be a part of my life. I'm not currently. My group won the Oldskool competition. It was really like a wild competition. We won the Oldskool competition at Evoke 2022, and ever since then, I've kind of put it on the back burner, working on other things. But I always pay attention to the news, and I'm always very appreciative of what other people are doing. So
that's amazing.
Always be a part of me.
And it's lovely that you're also somebody that is willing to document what happened as well, and share those things, because like I said, not all of us got to experience it, and it is something we want to experience. Now we've got this nostalgia thing to itch to scratch. I do want to go back and do the. I mean, it's a trope. And it is one of those obvious questions. I want to know what your first PC or first computer was, because this is something that does fascinate me in the difference in our cultures. The United States had the Trinity and the 1977 Trinity computers, where there were computers in people's homes from that year onwards. In the UK, it didn't happen until 1980. At a very limited amount, and then grew and then exploded in 1982. But what was it like for you? So start off with your first computer, and then I want to know what those early years were like living in the States.
They were magical. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
It's kind of a difficult question for me to answer because I can't quite put my finger on exactly what people want from an answer from that. So I'm actually going to give you 3 answers.
Oh, great.
In 1970,
I'll edit out the other 2.
Well, no, but they all lead into it. So in 1976, my father was working for Teletype, and he brought home a serial line analyzer because part of his job was writing documentation. And it had a tiny 1-line gas plasma display on it and a keyboard. And it wasn't a computer, but it was something where you could analyze the serial going through it, and recognize decoded characters would show up on the screen, but you could also type and show and see the letters go across.
Wow.
And he sat me on his lap, and I was typing little letters at age 5, age 6. And I was a bit of a reading prodigy. I was actually reading at age 2.5, so my English was very good. And he said his legs fell asleep because I was sitting on his lap for so long, just typing words and watching them go through the screen. So that's the first computer-like thing I've touched. But then, not much until 1980, when I used an Apple II in school in an educational sense, and an Osborne, a CPM luggable machine, across the street at a friend's house that his mother would bring home because she was an executive, and she would lug that damn machine to and from the office. And one day she came home and made the mistake of telling her son that, oh, by the way, someone gave me a game. So do you want to check it out? And it turned out to be Colossal Cave Adventure. Is the CPM version for the Osborne. And we spent hours unsuccessfully trying to finish the game. So those are my first
answer number 2
experiences. There you go. And as for the early years, I hate to say that from 80 to roughly 83, it was mostly focused on console gaming. It was I would have friends of various strengths that all owned different consoles, and my friendship with them was based on how often I could get access to their consoles. This is such a terrible thing to say, but someone had a VIC-20, someone had an Intellivision, someone else had an Atari 2600, and we at the time could not afford anything in our household, so I would get my fix that way.
I did exactly the same thing. I had a friend who lived about half a mile that way, who had an Atari 2600 way before I got into the ZX81.
Yeah.
So it was still a thing, and that's just that's what we're like. We're selfish as children. It's we've got to get our kicks.
That and the fact that I was just fascinated with the concept of a machine where I could tell it to do something and it would actually do it, unlike real life. So it's always been a fascination. I would say in '83, that's when everything changed for me, and that's roughly when everything started really ramping up in the USA in general, because I would see this visiting people in other states. In '83, the Apple really got a lot of their product in schools, and they did this through various incentives, sometimes even outright giving away machines. Jobs was no fool, and you get something in school, and then you bug your parents to get it. And so I had access to an Apple II Plus, and at age 12, and I used it for writing papers, because no one can see how many mistakes you make when you've got a backspace key. I would then use it for simple basic programming. A year later, they taught Logo, and that was also on Apple IIs. And that was actually where the programming light bulb went off. It wasn't with BASIC, believe it or not. It was with Logo, because Logo allows you to define procedures, functions essentially, and also pass in a parameter. And so you could have, a star thing that would draw a star, but then you could have a part of it, like, the distance that you go, be a variable. And so the same function could draw different size stars. This is just an example. I don't remember the exact thing I was working on when the light bulb went off, but that's when the programming light bulb went off. And after that, it was BASIC, Pascal, assembler, anything I could, throughout the entire 1980s, just learning how to program and being completely self-taught. So although I'm known as an IBM PC subject matter expert, it actually started primarily with the Apple II. So I can call negative 151 with the best of them, but I don't show my hand that often in that area.
It's really nice to hearing what your what the spark was. I think I didn't end up being a programmer, but the thing that really gave me the impetus to keep interested in computers wasn't so much games as the fact that we had something that we could influence, or we could change and make into shape in our own form. That's really nice. And I think everybody's got one of those stories, because everybody that's interested in this hobby anyway has got one of those stories. And it's really interesting hearing where that inflection point is. There's always some light bulb that goes off, and it's different for everybody. But for that, that was mine. It was, wait a second, I can code something once, but have it do different things in different contexts. And that's when I really got programming. In BASIC, all variables are global. So it wasn't quite the same thing. But yeah, just the definition of a procedure, I think it's proc, literally, in Logo, and the concept of variables. And then that was it, off to the races. You well.
It has.
Right, so after the demo scene, I wanted to talk about MobyGames, because this is something that you co-founded.
I did.
And this is part of your preservation efforts. Can you just first of all give us a high-level view of what MobyGames.com is?
MobyGames is the world's largest gaming database. Much like IMDb is the largest database for movies, MobyGames is the largest database for games. And by database, I mean something that's an actual database where everything is normalized and connected. So you can look up a game, which itself may not be interesting. You can also, however, get a full list of the credits of people who worked on it. possibly maybe not also interesting, but you can then see the role that those people had. If there's a particular graphics artist you liked, you can click on their name, get a list of the things they did, when they did them. Or you can go back up a level and immediately see screenshots for the game. You can leave reviews and other things. I would say it is a combination of IMDb and Wikipedia specifically for gaming. At the time it was created, it was an idea of mine, and I went to my co-founder, Brian Hurt, and described it to him over the phone. I wanted to try to program it myself, but he had a history of programming websites this was 1998. And I got into one of my rants, and I think I was talking for 45 minutes straight. And then, like we usually do, we talked about other stuff, and then we got off the phone. And then 2 or 3 days later, he called me back and he said, go to this address. And it was just an IP address. And it turned out to be his ISDN line going into his apartment. And he had coded up a mock-up of everything I had described, how I wanted it to look, stuff on the side, how the main game sheet was supposed to be, and everything. And he had put in like 1 or 2 dummy entries so we could work through it. And this was right before the internet bubble burst. This was mid 1998, and we went live February of 99. And the idea at the time was that this could be our full-time job, and that we would maintain this, and we would make money off of, at the time, internet advertising. Well, a year and a half later, the bottom fell out of the internet advertising market as the bubble burst. And then since then, it's been essentially a community effort all the way up until, I want to say, 2010, where the site sort of broke even, and we started to develop a community, and the community really cared about how we did stuff. So the main thing that separates, you might think, well, I can just do a Google search, and the first search result is Wikipedia, and I'll just go there. Wikipedia is still community, edited, and there can be plenty of inaccuracies in Wikipedia. The difference between that philosophy and MobyGames is that MobyGames has a team of people who care about accuracy. They, when people are entering lists of credits, generally they want to also see a scan of the manual page where you're getting that from, or a dump of the data where you're getting that from, or even some screenshots where you're getting that from. And it's to prevent abuse. And MobyGames started from the very beginning, like pretty much everything I've done in this hobby, it is trying to document history as accurately as possible. And so there are some pros and cons. Sometimes when a new contributor wants to add something into MobyGames that isn't already there, they become frustrated with the review process, because it's like a big form and you have to enter things, and you can't advance until you've got at least a couple of bare minimum pieces of information. It's not like editing Wikipedia, where you literally click edit and type whatever you want. So that can be a little frustrating, but in the end, MobyGames is certainly the most verified and the most accurate. In 2010, Brian and I left MobyGames. We could not. We had other things going on. We had to support our families, and we sold it to GameFly, which was a bit of a mistake. GameFly didn't know what to do with it. And then it was sold to some private investors active in the game space. One of them, Simon Carless, who used to be editor of Gama Sutra and now helps run GDC, and used to help run GDC, and now I think he has his own industry newsletter. So it was in good hands. And then a couple of years ago, Atari stepped in and said, we want to buy it, and we will shepherd it, and we will grow it, and we will hire you on to help keep going. I'm completely out of that acquisition loop. However, I met them last weekend at Midwest Gaming Classic, and we had a nice talk. I've talked with actual officers of Atari there, some of whom are involved with MobyGames, and I'm just happy to see that it is really in great hands. Atari has been a bit of a joke sometimes back in the Infogrames days, where they would just license the name Atari and slap it on terrible games. But in the last 5 years, they've really come around. They really care about the history. They care about the heritage. And they are really great stewards of MobyGames. So even though I'm not involved with it, I would say if you've never been to MobyGames, give it a shot. Just look up your favorite game, see if there's something new there that you didn't know before.
Well, a couple of things.
That was a long diatribe, but can I wrap it? Can I go all the way back to 1998 real quick?
Go for it.
Okay. Like many things in my life, it was spawned from piracy. I was also one of the 10 people founding the abandonware movement in 1995. And I don't want to go into that right now because I don't know how long the statute I don't know how long the statute of limitations involves is. But anyway, but an offshoot of that was I created a giant website with a lot of games to share, abandonware, and that, guess what? They all had a list of the people who made them, screenshots, the whole thing. It was essentially a proto MobyGames that had to be shut down when I was sent a cease and desist letter. Again, not really worth going into, other than the fact that I got caught with my hand in the cookie jar. But the reason I did all of that was because I would play these games and I was like, this has great graphics. Who did that? Or I was playing, I think that I can trace it all the way back to a game called Continuum in the US, published by Data East. In Europe, you knew it as Alpha Waves. It's this strange, abstract game from 1990 where you are a little robot inside of a 3D room with platforms, and you platform onto them as full 3D. So 1990, pretty impressive. And one of the themes of the game was every room or section of rooms had a different piece of music. And I loved the music. And I'm like, who did that music? And where can I find more games by that person? And that was the germ of all of it. The abandonware, MobyGames, etc. I've since come to answer that question. It was a French person. and some of the songs were not his. Some of them were Debussy. So I now have some Debussy in my collection. But yeah, there you go. That's how software piracy leading to better gaming history.
It's led to a lot of good things, I do believe. So I had a little trawl around MobyGames, and I found you on there.
Oh yeah,
I found your profile on there. It doesn't look like it's been updated in a while.
No, like I said, around 2010, I kind of had to walk away. Actually, to be honest, the first 2 years of MobyGames were very difficult. I had 2 young children, and this was supposed to be the startup that would be my job and that I would retire on. And for 2 years, all my free time went into the site, and it impacted my family. And my wife and I had to talk. And after 2 years, I stepped down a little bit and stepped back. But in 2006, I learned something about community management. This goes back a little bit to trying to participate in communities. In that, my goal for MobyGames was also to develop a very strict classification taxonomy. But to describe games based on their elements. For example, let's take Ultima. It is a top-down or overhead RPG, set in a medieval fantasy world with these elements or whatever. And so come up with these, phylum and whatever you want to use, these things that you can use to classify games, and then you can find other games that match the same criteria or track them through time, or all this wonderful research that you could do. Unfortunately, as our community grew, they did not share my vision for that, and it came down to they wanted to create certain classifications and genres that I felt did not fit into the idea of that taxonomy. And I had to make a decision. Do I stick to my guns and lose the community? Or do I keep the site going and keep the community but lose my ideals? And I chose the latter because sometimes community projects run away from you. And that was a lesson I learned. And I don't necessarily hate MobyGames or what happened or those people. It was just, sometimes life does this. And I just had to
You can't
adjust.
win them all.
Can't win them all.
So I've got a problem, and you might be able to help me with this. You might be able to point me in the right direction because, and this has just occurred to me. I have this game stuck in my head, and I don't know what it is. And I've got the vaguest impression of what this game is. I couldn't tell you the genre. It's an arcade game. It was in a pub called the Brewer's Arms, which is not very far away from me, where we used to go as a family, and I would be given a stack of coins to feed into this machine while my parents socialized. And it was a lovely pub, actually. It still is quite a nice pub.
That's something we do not have in America. We have bars, but we don't have a pub culture. And I would love to visit you someday and see what that's like.
Oh, it's not what it was. Don't come here to visit a pub. Unless you've got a time machine as well, because they are not what they used to be.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But yeah, if you'd have made this part of MobyGames where you could actually track different games from different aspects of them, I think I would have had a chance of finding this game. And it's driving me. We drove past it. My wife and I drove past it a few days ago. And every single time I drive past it, I get this flash of memory of playing it. And I can't quite just get it into the forefront of my mind. It's so frustrating. It drives me nuts.
Can you describe it at all? Maybe I might know off the top of my head, because I've played a lot of video games, and we actually have, in addition to the world's largest retro convention, we also have the world's largest video arcade in my area as well, the Galloping Ghost Arcade. Wow. There are 900 games on the floor, maybe up to 950 at this point. If
you could just walk around there with your phone and live stream it, then maybe I'll spot it.
Got 7 hours, but sure.
Yeah. I swear one day I'm going to sit down with a MAME collection and just go through them one at a time until I find it.
Take you weeks.
I think that's the only way.
Yeah. What was it like? I'm just curious. I might actually know it off the top of my head.
I wish I knew. I wish I knew.
Like, can you remember, like, was it shooting? Was it moving?
Nothing.
Oh, okay. You just have fond memories of it.
Just fond memories. And when these flashbacks happen, I get an impression of playing the game and what was going on the screen, but nothing solid enough that I could describe. It's maddening. It drives me crackers.
Sorry to hear that.
But you've got some favorite games, because I found on your MobyGames account, you've got a list of how many games are here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I should update that. That hasn't been updated in like 10 years.
So this is 10 years ago. This is Jim Leonard's list of favorite games at that time. So Arcanum of Steamworks and Magic Obscura. This is alphabetical, by the way.
Yes.
Which is a 2001 Windows game. Archie, I can never say this word.
Archipelagos.
Go on. Thank you.
No problem.
A 1989 DOS game. Defender of the Crown. Now you've put that down as a DOS game.
Yes, and a booter game. Now, obviously, everyone knows it started life on Amiga, but what people don't know is that every time Kellen Beck ported it to a new system, he changed the rules. He was never happy with how it worked. And the original Amiga version looks and sounds lovely, but it is hard as hell unless you do a particular strategy. By the time I found it, it was a DOS version, and the rules were more balanced, and it's one of the few strategy games I can actually win. I am normally quite terrible at strategy games, being a child of twitchy arcade reflexes.
Same. I bounced off of it hard on the Amiga because it was so hard. So maybe I'll play the DOS version.
Yeah, I think the best version is actually the Commodore 64. The loading times are terrible, but the game mechanics are perfectly balanced, and there's the addition of a new action you can take. There's a spy you can use to try to send off and see how much gold and how much people are in the garrison at a
modern
castle.
Technology will help us with the loading time, so maybe I'll try that one.
Yeah.
Deus Ex, this is one of my favorites as well. Windows game from 2000. Hack 1984 on DOS.
So Hack is the precursor. So Hack is the successor to Rogue when people talk about rogue-like games. So it is like that. It is overhead and all text-based and turn-based. It is after Rogue, but before NetHack. It is literally the precursor to NetHack. People took the Hack source code and expanded it in ludicrously crazy ways. And it took me 26 years to actually beat Hack. It's playable on anything, including the IBM PC XT behind me. And I fire it up probably once every month or two and have another playthrough. So is that your game, your go-to game, that if you think I need to play a game now? If I need to relax, if I need to de-stress, it is my go-to game. I think being a turn-based game is part of that, actually, because you can just kind of sit there and think about, okay, I'm about to die. Is there anything I can do to get out of this situation? You just kind of sit.
Okay, so the next item on the list is I don't know if I've ever heard of this one. 1998 Windows game called Half-Life.
Yes.
Is that a strategy game as well?
It can be, depending on how you play. Half-Life was an obsession in many ways. It's one of the few times I have upgraded a computer to play the game better. Half-Life added support for the Orreal A3D sound card, which was a special sound card that had 3D geometry processing in it. And
you can hear people coming.
Yeah, you can hear them coming, and even better, when they, like, for example, if they cross in front of a rock, it gets muffled, and then you hear it a little bit out to the side because now the sound is bouncing off of a building formation and coming at you. Very advanced for the late 90s. So very few games I have upgraded my system for. But when you're done with this list, I can tell you the new top 3 entry that I have upgraded I have upgraded my system twice to play. So.
Okay. So my Half-Life best memory was Half-Life Deathmatch. I obviously played through the game, and I was playing. We lived in this house. And I had my PC set up in the living room. In the dining room in our house. On the dining room table, that's where my computer space was. This was a garage at that time, and I had connected up through the modem. So we were, in the UK, we pay for the local rate calls. This was costing me money to play Half-Life Deathmatch.
Yes.
And my mother-in-law walked in and looked over my shoulder at what I was doing, and I said, "Oh, watch this." And I was addicted to the sniper rifle in Half-Life, and I just saw somebody cross through a gap in a window and just headshot them, and she kind of looked at me as if to say, "What the hell was that?" And I said, "That was a real person." And again, she looked at me as if to say, "What's going on here? What's happening?" But that was where multiplayer gaming really just exploded for me.
And myself as well. Maybe this will ring a bell. I used to set up trip mines in somewhat obvious places and then camp very far off with the crossbow and watch people come around the corner, see the trip mine and stop. But then I would shoot the trip mine with the crossbow and make it explode and kill them anyway. And I took some small amount of perverse pleasure in making them think that they had avoided a calamity, and actually got killed. No, Half-Life 2 played not only online, but statute of limitations. I can say this too. We actually would play it at work on the LAN, and we would wait until lunchtime, and we would move to different cubes that we knew executives couldn't see, and we would have. Not only that, some of us would also be in offices and during lunchtime, and we would conference call. And so it was this hilarious form of insider cheating where people on a team were all on a conference call and can be like, "Okay, I just died over at this building. Watch out," et cetera, et cetera. And so we would always win because we were cheating.
Amazing. What memories. Okay, I'm going to rattle through the rest of this list because we're already heading towards an hour.
No problem.
And this is going to be a record. And I do apologize to the people listening. We're expecting a half-hour podcast, but it's just sometimes you just gotta go with the flow because Jim's a very, very interesting man, and there's a lot to talk about. So the next item on the list is one of my favorite games ever. The Operative, No One Lives Forever.
Oh, wonderful game.
What an amazing game. Just a couple of years after Half-Life. And really, really, I felt at the time stepped the genre forward, and was I still maintain to this day one of the best James Bond games ever.
I agree with all of that wholeheartedly. And what made it great was not just how it nailed the atmosphere and the kitsch of the 60s and so on. Honestly, the writing is amazing. I would stop and sneak around, not because I enjoyed stealth gameplay, but because I wanted to sneak up on two enemies talking to each other, and the conversations they had with each other were hilarious. Really great writing, really great sets, and I think everybody should play it. It's a shame that the rights for that game are completely lost in limbo. There's, I think, 3 or 4 different companies that all think they own it. And as a result, it has never seen a re-release or a restoration, a remaster, and we probably never will. On the upside, once again, theme of this podcast, piracy. There's a site dedicated to...
Sorry. Community is the thing.
Community, I'm sorry. There is a wonderful website, I don't recall the name of it, that has all three games, the Operative, its sequel, and the add-on. And they are all patched for playing on modern systems. So that is a very strong recommendation.
I'm going to give you the next 6 items on the list all at once, and you've got to pick one that you can talk about. So we've got Rocket Ranger, San Francisco Rush 2049, Stunt Track Racer, Taz Times in Tonetown, Under a Killing Moon, and Wasteland.
Oh, God, this is Sophie's choice. How can I possibly pick one to talk about?
Pick your favorite child.
I will pick Taz Times in Tonetown because I started with that on the Apple IIgs, and it was a showcase of what that system could display. The 2GS, the ST, and the Amiga all had the same graphics, but the 2GS leveraged it was one of the very first games, probably one of the 3 first games that truly supported the 2GS's Insonic sound chip. So the 2GS has the capabilities of an Amiga, except instead of 4 channels, it has 15. And instead of using up to 512K for samples, it can only use down to 64. So some advantages and some limits. But it had a very interesting kind of a new wave title song, and I was hooked, and I started there. But then I was only able to play that because I would choose my babysitting clients strategically along with my friends, and I always loved babysitting for a family that had an Apple IIgs, and so after the kids were in bed, I would steal some time on the 2GS. I bought it for the PC. It was an interesting game for the PC. It was one of the few booting games for the PC, so no DOS. You, just like any other 8-bit computer, you stick the disk in and turn it on, and it boots directly. And it remains one of my favorites because of its new wave aesthetic, its language, the puzzle solving is a little difficult, but ultimately what I really like about it is that it was the first game I ever played that had kind of a sad ending. And normally you play games and you are expecting a happy ending. The bad guy loses, the good guy wins, everybody goes home happy. And the ending in Taz Times in Tonetown, which I will not spoil for anyone, is bittersweet. And I had never encountered that in a game before. So that's why it's on the list. And now for the game I've upgraded my system 3 times for.
Yep.
Cyberpunk 2077. I have 1,000. I'm coming up on 1,000 hours. I started out with a CPU and 2 video cards ago, and I'm now up to a 13900K and a 4090. Also, I can play that game better and with ray tracing and with bigger textures and faster. It is the game teenage me has been wanting for 4 decades. It ticks all the boxes. Blade Runner, Akira, Cyberpunk, everything. The game has flaws, I'm not going to lie, but like the combat is a little simplistic. But it looks and sounds great, and the writing is very much in the cyberpunk aesthetic, in not just the words, but the whole idea of sort of a dystopian future society, in that there is no correct choice. So which choice do you make? And there you go.
It's a game that I've been promising myself I'm going to get to play at some point, if I can just invent an extra day in the week, or hours in the day, then that's going to happen. But at the moment, they're all filled up.
Yeah.
So you mentioned one you were talking about Taz Times in Tonetown, about sound and sound capabilities.
Yes,
and it's something that that you're quite involved with in recently on your YouTube channel. You released a video about the Mindscape music board, and I think it's one of the best YouTube videos I've seen I'm trying to think if there's anything better than that. Honestly,
do go on.
I think it's one of the best videos I've ever seen. It is perfection.
Oh, thank you so much.
And I can see the heart and soul and sweat and blood and tears that went into making that video. And if anybody listening to this goes off and has a look at your YouTube channel, the Oldskool PC, the link will be in the description. All of the links will be in the description or the show notes. If you go and have a look at Jim's channel, you'll see that there isn't a prolific amount of content on there. But what he does do is puts out the best video that he can possibly do. And this one, I think, is where you've absolutely hit your peak. And I don't know. Do you worry, actually, that the only way is down now?
Oh, I absolutely do. A 6-month production schedule is not sustainable. And it's actually longer than that, because the first interview was August of 2023. And it took me 18 months just to get that interview. And thankfully, after he's come to me later and said, "You did a great job, and I'm really happy you covered this moment in history, and thank you so much." And it was great. It was totally worth it. But I'm so happy with it. I've gone back and watched it myself just as a viewer, like a week later. Like, yeah, I really did do a good job on that. And that sounds narcissistic, but it's the kind what I enjoy about the demo scene, about making videos, about documenting history is how you can, it's like solving a puzzle that is solvable. Now, that sounds a little weird, but it's like learning the constraints of a puzzle box, and then figuring out that there is one perfect way to do something. And that's what appealed to me about the demo scene. Now, for videos, that's totally open-ended, and it's not like that. But I felt like if I could tick all the boxes, I have a personal history with this thing. I know how to demonstrate it. I've been increasing my videography skills over the years, and video production and everything else. I just felt like normally I would not put that much time into a video, but I felt like no one is going to do this for this thing. And I'm in the best position to do it, especially since I had one of the boards. So I thought it was worth doing.
Completely deserves all the praise it gets, and it got a lot of praise. I did actually read the comments today, and it's like a rogues gallery of who's who in retro gaming and vintage tech.
Yeah. Including some other people including some people I didn't expect. Well, I did expect Modern Vintage Gamer, because Dimitri and I have exchanged pleasantries throughout the years, and he's cool. And if you haven't seen Modern Vintage Gamer, he's very passionate about this stuff. So everybody's seen him. So go see that. EEV blog popped in. I was not expecting to see him as well.
Dave Jones.
And that honestly, that's the best. That's the best reward, in knowing that I did in fact nail it. And I'm proud of the video for something else too, because I had to go out of my comfort zone, and this goes into the aspect of making YouTube videos at all, in that the way I want to make a video is that I want to introduce something and just talk about it constantly. However, you have to play the YouTube marketing game. And the reason you have to play that game, you have to follow a certain structure, and you have to lead people on a little bit, not dishonestly, but you have to structure your videos in such a way, because it's not about getting 1 million views or earning a ton of money. It's so that YouTube will recommend your video to the correct audience. And you just said it's a rogues gallery of people commenting on it. I'm not entirely sure all of the people would have seen it if I had structured the video differently. And so this is the problem that we have as YouTube creators, and that we have to come up with a thumbnail that gets your attention, which then leads you to reading the title. And the two of those things will lead you to finally clicking on it. And then you have to reward the viewer for clicking on it. So don't waste their time in the first 30 seconds. And then after that, you have to, if you were clickbaity at all, you have to deliver on your promise in the first 2 minutes. And it's this game, and it's marketing. And it's not something I want to do, but it's something that I think more people need to think about doing. especially as subscribers become less important as YouTube evolves as a platform, as a recommendation engine. So that is actually, sad to say, part of why I'm proud of the video, because I feel like I cracked that problem, or at least for that subject matter, for that video, I feel I cracked that problem. So sometimes it's not all about the retro.
You did an amazing job. I think I would put that up there with broadcast quality. In fact, better than a lot of the stuff. If you go and watch anything to do with with our community's interests on television, a broadcast, production, it was better than all of that. I can't think of a single thing that was. Anyway,
the advantage of a 6-month production timeline. Television shows have a 1-week production timemeline. I want to take a small moment to shout out to the YouTube channel DIY, who helped me a little bit with this. He helped me not a little bit. He helped me a lot with the cinematography, and he himself is a professional colorist. And you should definitely check out his channels if you enjoy repair videos with even better cinematography than mine.
He does like restoration of PCs and Macs and all sorts of things.
Yes.
Yeah, and a fantastic, and a great recommendation. Great. I will endorse that recommendation as well. He's a lovely guy as well, and very, very helpful with other YouTubers, and always offering advice with the things that he's an amazing expert with. So it's time we put a pin in this thing we call a podcast episode and move on to find our next dopamine hit. Don't do drugs, kids. And I would humbly remind you, the lifeblood of these things we like to call content is you listening there on your Microsoft Zune whilst jogging in your shiny tracksuit. Without you, we are just old men shouting at clouds. We thank you for being so generous with your time and hope the reward of listening was enough to encourage you to share this podcast with your family and friends. And if for some reason they're not into obsolete computers, I find that hard to imagine, then a like and a nice comment on your chosen platform would go a long way toward letting us know you exist. And last of all, thank you to Jim for being a fantastic human being and most importantly, a brilliant guest. Goodbye, Jim.
Goodbye, Lee, and thank you for fostering a community.
Ah.